Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Realistic Budgets class. This is our third installment in in your financial life workshop. I'm so glad to have you here this evening. Please say hi in the comment section and let me know where you're chatting from or where you're joining in from. And since you're here on time, could you just copy this link and share with other people who also need to be in this class? Please on your WhatsApp status, on your social media pages, and get others to join in too. We're going to be starting in a minute. Apologies for the late start. And while we're sharing, I'm going to share my screen so we can just get started. So in today's class, we're going to be looking at a few things together. My name is Onyeka, by the way, if you're just meeting me for the first time. I am a qualified accountant, certified financial educator, and a money coach. So I support individuals, professionals especially, in taking control of their finances and winning with their money. Through the course of this session, I'm going to be asking a series of questions that just pop up as we talk about budgeting today. And please use the chat section freely. I can see your chats on the side. The goal of this workshop is just as the name is, it is realistic budgeting, and it is to help you understand and learn practical budgeting. So not just what people say you should do, but how to construct your budgets in a way that will be useful to you and very specific to your current lifestyle and the goals you have for your future. We're going to be sharing real life examples. So I asked earlier that people should share their budgets if they want to have it reviewed in the live session. And thankfully, we had a few submissions. So we're going to go through about 3 today if we have time. And then I will share with you actionable tips that you can make use of immediately and in the next 2 to 3 months to support your journey. A few housekeeping rules. Like I said, there'll be a live review of budgets. There'll be Q&A at the end of this. So if you have questions, please drop them in the chat and I'll pick them up at the end of the session. And do feel free to take notes throughout the duration of this class. We'll be spending between 60 to 75 minutes together. And I've stripped this down to the bare minimum. So we're just talking about the most important things that you need to know. So we're going to start off with the foundation. And the objective of this is to establish the core budgeting principles and build your knowledge base so that you can create budgets that you are happy to stick to. So let's start off with this. Why do you think that most people's budgets fail? There are a number of reasons for that. In fact, when people say budget, a lot of people are scared of the name of the word budget because it feels very restrictive. Someone tells you, oh, you need to put down, let's say, I'm going to be working with pounds, dollars, and naira, so I'm going to use them interchangeably. So someone says you should spend only 200 pounds on your feeding. That sounds restrictive, especially if month on month that number changes for you, depending on whether you eat at home or whether you eat out. Another thing is that there are so many, it's possible that you're accounting for expenses that are not regular. So an example here would be for people who pay utility bills, your electricity bill might change month on month. So how do you exactly know what amount to put aside as a budget for utilities when it's an irregular expense for you? The other thing is that sometimes we make budgets and we don't create emergency buffers. So there can be unexpected events that might happen while you are living day on day. But if you don't have room for that in your budget is going to fail. Something else to think about is that we all tell you to, yes, track your spendings. And truly, I confess, I do the same thing too. I actually want people to track their spendings because it is difficult to plan for stuff that you do not know. So if you track regularly, it can become very laborious. You can feel like this is exhausting to do. There are ways to work around that, by the way. You don't have to do it daily. Like me, you can do it monthly or you can do it on a weekly basis. So that takes away some of the labor that comes with tracking your spendings. And finally, sometimes the budgets we create for ourselves don't align with the actual values and the goals that we have. In the very first class of this workshop, if you missed it, please go through my playlist and go watch it. What we did in that class was to define what our values and our goals are. Now, budgeting becomes easier when you know what your goals are. If you don't know what it is difficult to tell your money what to do. And if you don't tell your money what to do, your money is going to do stuff that it wants to do. So these are some of the reasons that most budgets fail. So if you feel like you fall into any of those categories, do let me know in the chat. Why do you think that your budgeting has failed in the past? And then today we're going to work on correcting all of that. Now, when it comes to realistic budgeting, there is a framework to use. The 50-30-20 rule is a rule of budgeting that is very, very common, which means that many of us have very likely heard about this framework before. You know about 50-30 budgeting rule, 30-20. But the truth is that it's just a starting point. It's not actually a hard and fast rule that everybody must follow. And the reason for this, again, is that our lifestyles, our plans, our goals all differ. You might find that at some point in your life, your savings goal is big, and therefore your budget is tilting more towards putting more money aside for savings than you are putting aside for spending. But before we jump into all of that, let me just explain to you what the 50-30-20 rule of budgeting says. What this does is to split your budget into 3 parts. The largest part is supposed to go to your needs, and that's 50% of your income. Now, this is going to cover very essential needs like your housing costs. So whether it's your rent or your mortgage, your utility costs like electricity, water, and the likes, groceries for feeding, your transport cost, and your insurance. 30% of your income will cover things that are your wants. These are stuff that make life a bit more enjoyable for you. Sometimes we think of it as our fun costs. An example of this would be dining out, your entertainment. So you like to go to the movies, you want to go on vacation, your hobbies like golfing, for those who love that, karaoke, and etc., and subscriptions. So your subscriptions would be things like your gym memberships, your streaming services, including Spotify and the likes. While 20% of your income is expected to go to your savings, investments, and debts. So this is what is going to cover saving for your emergency fund, investing for retirement, or putting money aside to pay off debts. Now, the truth is that when it comes to this 50-30-20 rule, so much can change depending on the individual and what point you are in your life. An example might be that somebody who is married with children will have a different split of this budget. Somebody who lives in a more expensive city like Lagos, New York, London, Hong Kong will have a higher split of this budget. And depending on the goals that you also have. So if you have a goal, for example, to buy a house in the next 12 to 24 months, you may have more money put aside into savings, money that is beyond 20%. So what should you do with this information? Well, pay attention to some of the psychographic and demographic rules that are applying here and ask yourself, where do I fall in this bucket? And what goals do I have? What life stage am I in? And what does my location actually expect me to spend more or less on? So if you live in high cost city like the ones I mentioned earlier, you might find that your budgeting rule changes from 50-30-20 to 60-20-20 or to 60-25-15 or to 65-20-15. This is still going to be split between your needs, your wants, and your savings and debts and investments. Now with budgeting, although this rule changes depending on who you are and where you are, there are still non-negotiables when it comes to budgeting. One non-negotiable is that you do have to pay yourself first. And what this means is that, think about it this way. Everything you do with your money, I mean, a huge chunk of it is really about paying other people. When you go out to get groceries, you are paying the supermarket the money for the groceries. When you take the transportation, the trains, the buses, whatever, you are paying for that service. When you pay rent, you're giving money to your landlord for a service they're rendering to you. So paying yourself first is really giving money for your future self. So when you invest, you are putting aside money for the you of 20, 30 years to come who won't be working anymore. When you're saving, you're putting money aside for you. So this is what it means to pay yourself first. So one non-negotiable here is to automate your savings. I love when I ask people what they've done with their money in a month, and a huge chunk of people say they are saving. I love that. Please save more. Another one is that you need to track your money, really. I know I said it can get laborious for so many people, but if you don't know where your money is going, I'm not sure how you can plan, really. How do you know you're doing something right? How do you know you're doing something wrong? How do you know where to change whatever steps you're doing now to make it better in the future? It's hard to tell. So at least for 30 days, track and then see where you are. It's easier to plan when you can see where you are. Number 3 is that you definitely need a buffer. This will be your emergency fund. So if you don't have one already, I want you to start by putting aside, at least as fast as you can, save the first $1,000 or £1,000. If you're in Nigeria, save your first 100,000 naira. This would be 1 month of buffer for you. And then after you save the first month, then gradually put aside money for the next 3 to 6 months of your expenses. People also do not remember to have an annual expense fund. There are things that you probably pay for on an annual basis. So if you live in, for example, Nigeria and the UK, or maybe Canada, you're probably paying rent on a monthly basis. If you live in countries like Nigeria, you're paying rent on an annual basis. You need an expense fund that covers annual rent. So every month, regardless of whether this money is supposed to be paid in 12 months' time or in 6 months' time, start building up that fund. Another might be insurance or even Christmas gifts. It's going to be Christmas very soon. And some people don't even already know where the money for the gifts you're going to buy will come from. So you need to have a fund for stuff like this. Make room for it in your budget. And then finally, our last non-negotiable is that you need to review. How do you know you are getting it right if you don't review? So my suggestion is that every week, set aside 15 minutes, or even on a monthly basis, set aside 15 to 30 minutes so that you can review what you're doing and look for rooms for improvement. This is going to save you hundreds. I'm telling you, hundreds. I did it and I was able to shave off so much of my expenses that I had more money to put aside into my savings and certain goals that I've set for myself. Now, the other thing I want us to pay attention to is context. And I've been talking about context so much already. When you're making a budget, your purchasing power is going to be different. This is just basically what your money is able to afford depending on where you are. So somebody who is in the UK and somebody who is in the US and somebody who is in Nigeria or in Ghana, your purchasing power is going to be different. So you need to pay attention to this. Also, sometimes we pay too much attention in budgeting to using absolute numbers rather than percentages. I think it's a lot easier for so many people to focus on percentages when it comes to budgeting. So you can tell yourself, I'm going to spend 10% of my income on feeding, as opposed to I'm going to spend exactly 80,000 naira on feeding. So percentages is easier, they are easier to manage as a whole. Also pay attention to the cost of living adjustments. If you are a remote worker, you've probably noticed that your salary is different in the same role, in the same company, but it's different from somebody if you live in, let's say, Nigeria. Your salary in the same role with the same company is different from somebody who lives in the United States. Even within the United States, the salary of somebody in the same role on the same job working remotely who lives in San Francisco will be different from the person who lives in Texas. So there'll be adjustment for cost of living. And the point of this is because different locations tend to have different costs. So it's more expensive, like I'm in the UK, it's more expensive to live in London than it is to live in maybe Liverpool or Manchester. So the salary of somebody in London will be higher than the person who is in either of those two cities I mentioned. And then finally, when you are thinking about saving, always consider the stability of the currency you are saving in. So if you live in a country where there is so much currency volatility, like Nigeria, I'm sorry I keep using Nigeria, but like Nigeria, you need to think about saving in a way that inflation does not eat so much into your money. So if you can find ways to hedge your savings by maybe investing in high interest accounts or saving in foreign currency, that would be most helpful to you. So pay attention to the currency you're budgeting with and the context. Okay. So that's the end of part one of the session. I hope you understood the foundation and that was helpful to you. So the next thing we're going to do is to actually look at real people's budgets. We're going to apply these foundational principles to real life scenarios. I have 3 budgets to work with here. Some of what we're going to be paying attention to in this budget is 1, lifestyle creep. We're going to look for areas in the budgets where they are spending a lot of money that we can cut back on. Each person has told us what their goals are. So we're going to look at their budgets from the standpoint of the goals they have and the cities they're living in. We're going to look at invisible expenses, what they've allocated for savings, and that's the emergency fund, retirement, and their goals. We're going to look at their housing costs and whatnot, and any international considerations that may come up in the midst of this. So we're going to go to budget number 1. I have, for the benefit of these people, anonymized them. So just to protect their privacy, okay? Yeah, so this is budget number 1. Here we have a 33-year-old male living in Nigeria and has a full-time job. Okay, so let's see. His income is 692,900. Okay, his income is 693,000 naira. Okay. His goals is to 1, optimize his savings and investments. 2, explore another source of income. And the specific challenge he wants to deal with in this budget is to monitor his spending more appropriately. We can work with that. We have his retirement fund currently at 6.5 million. I think this is great. This is a hefty chunk of money for someone who is 33-year-old. If we're estimating that he will retire at, let's say, 65, 70, he still has another 30 plus years of work, and this would be a very generous sum of money by then. He also has personal investments worth 8.4 million. Well done. An emergency fund in $4,000. I love that. So already off the bat, what I can see that is working for this individual is 1, he has a good balance in his budget. You see at the very top here, I've used the 60-20-20 as a planned allocation, but if you look at his actual, you can see that rather than 60% in essential costs, which is his needs, he's spending 54%, which is great. His lifestyle cost is a bit higher though at 24%, and his savings is at 14%. There is 100 naira left to allocate that hasn't gone anywhere. So we can just chuck that money into a buffer sum for unexpected expenses. And if you pile this up regularly every month, put in an account, and just build up that 100 naira all the time into something every single month, you'll find that when you have an unexpected expense come up, you have somewhere to pull the money from. Easy peasy. And then there is debt of 460,000 naira. All right. So let's look at the actual budget. There are percentages by the side here so we can see what portion of his income is going to what. I love that there is tithe here. I'm very big on giving. So again, this is a high point of this budget. So altogether, your giving budget is about 18.7%. Not bad. His rent is 50K. So I'm assuming that this individual is building up his rent gradually. So there is an annual fund for rent already, which is something that is working for this budget. So if it is if he's saving 50K every month for 12 months, that reduces the pressure on paying rent in the new year. So because the money is already saved up somewhere. Everything else looks to be on the low side. What I'm flagging though is that transportation is up at 100,000. I don't know why that's the case, but it is interesting to see. And I can see investments, but I can't see any saving goals. Doesn't look like this person has any real goals currently. Sometimes I'm flagging here is that his fund cost is at 138,600. Okay. So overall, there's a decent balance to the budget. There's good money in retirement savings and investments. I love that his emergency fund is in dollars. That is the currency hedge. And that he's putting money into a rental fund. What I think that we can improve in this budget, because he said his challenge is to monitor his spending more appropriately, and his goals are to optimize saving and investments and to explore another source of income. I think something that can be done here is to review again your transport costs and your fund costs. These are the two high numbers in your budget. I'm not sure why it's this high because you haven't added notes to the side. But I would start from the lifestyle costs. For example, if you want to optimize savings, then and you want to explore a new source of income, I think one can fit into the other, by the way. If you want a new source of income, you might need to start a side business if that's possible for you to do. And you will need a little bit of capital to do this. If you do a service-based business, you might not spend a lot of money, but it's helpful to have some money on the side. For example, this Zoom call actually cost me money to set up. So it's something to think about. And I'm going to start the shaving of the cost from the fund side. Now, you don't need to drastically cut this, but at 20%, you can work towards the next month's spending on fun, work on reducing that by about 5%. So bring that figure down from 20% to 15% of your income. And that gives you an extra 5% to throw into a savings goal of exploring a new source of income. The other thing you've mentioned is that you want to monitor your spending more appropriately. So definitely you need to be tracking your spending. You definitely need a budget tracker. So you can get one on your app store if you want to use an app to do it. I think there are banks in Nigeria that also allow you to, for example, this is not an advertisement, by the way, but I think that BFD Bank and possibly Kuda, but it's worth exploring those two, allows you to categorize your spendings from your account. So explore that. If you make either of these your core spending account, then you might be able to track spending a bit better. Option 3 is to use a spreadsheet to track your spending. My Smart Money Kit has a spending tracker there that you can use to track your spending. You can do that on a weekly basis for your kids because you need to monitor it a bit more closely at this stage until you're able to optimize your budget fully. So plan to do that for the next 1 to 3 months on a weekly basis. And then afterwards, you can adjust that to doing it on a monthly basis. Another income stream to explore might be with your investments. So unless you're currently, unless you're currently compounding your investments, you can think about investing in some low risk assets like treasury bills, money market funds, commercial papers. This is one way to get additional income. But I'm assuming with this question, you really want something outside the investing bit. So explore service-based offer. You have a skill, you have a knowledge, sell that. My next class, that will hold likely at the end of this month, will cover this, but it's going to be a closed class, so it won't be public like this. So you can plan to attend that too. But something that I think you can also adjust here is the fact that I do not see anything for your debt payment. I can see a debt of 460K, But I can't see anywhere in your budget where you've made room for paying off this debt. It's very important that you prioritize this. I don't know what the interest rate is, but you can take money if you are able to reduce the transport cost and the fund cost, especially. You can start off that with putting it into payment of your debt. And the other thing is you have 50,000 naira here that is going into investments. You can take that money for a start to pay off debts. And then once you've paid off the debt, you can move the money back into investing. So yeah, I think those are the comments I have for this budget. But overall, this is a very, very good start. You have done a very good job in, planning your finances, and well done. Okay, so that's number one. Let's move to budget number two. This is a female, 29, living in Nigeria. Her income is 712,500 naira. She's a consultant, multiple goals. So goal one is to buy her first car by May 2026 with a budget of 6 million naira. Okay. Second goal is to replenish her emergency fund with 5 months of living expenses within 1 year. So I'm going to get that within the next 12 months. And then goal number 3 is to save up for a side hustle business by March 2026. The specific challenge here is how to allocate her expense categories and goals based on her income. Is there more? Okay. Retirement savings is currently 2.5 million. That's good. Investments of 1.5 million. And emergency fund currently sits at 400,000 naira. That's amazing. I can see that, remember in the class we talked about the fact that your budget splits will depend on your goals. So this person has a lot of savings goals for happening within the next 12 months. And you can see here that the saving and investments is really heavy at 63%. Lifestyle cost is 13 and essential cost is 23. We can see the reason why this is the case for this individual. So not bad. And if we take a look at the rest of the budget, there is a 1.8% giving. Well done. Utilities, no rent. So it looks like this person either still lives with family or is living with somebody anyway. So cutting off rental costs is honestly a great move, I believe, especially when you feel like there's still room to improve your income. There is no shame in moving back home. It will just give you room to save more, invest more, and reduce your expenses generally. Let's see. Insurance is at 4, okay, that's medications. Transportation is at 11%, 80,000 naira. Looks like Nigeria is really expensive now with transports. Saving goals, 400,000 for cars, so 56% savings. That's a huge chunk of your income. Goal 2 is emergency fund, 50K, awesome. And lifestyle cost is 13%, so there's self-care at 60,000, subscription at 10,000, and fund cost at 25,000. So that's work, lunch, outing, and other transportations. Awesome. Now, what I am loving about this budget is that there's a high saving and investment rate. So clearly, this young lady is putting her money towards a thing that is very important to her in this stage of her life, which is buying that car, having that emergency fund, and starting a side hustle business, which is great. The other thing working here is that your retirement savings is good. So because this is deducted at source from your income, especially if you're a salaried worker, you have an opportunity to build up this money over time. So that's great. Although I do not see you, okay, you said other investment is 1.5 million. The thing is though that in your budget, I cannot see where it is unless you invested a bit and then you stopped investing. I love that you have some money in your emergency fund. If I look at your essential cost at 167, you have about 2 months-ish 2 months plus in there. So that's a great start. So my recommendations, and you don't have any debt, so that's awesome too. My recommendations is that, first of all, let's do a quick reality check. At your current savings rate for the car, I'm not seeing whether or not you have money already pre-saved before this budget. But if you are just starting this budgeting and you want to buy this car in May, that's just about 6 months to go. If you're putting aside 400,000 naira for 6 months, you're not going to have 6 million in that period. At this current rate, you're going to save 6 million in 15 months, not 6 months. And if you're curious about how I did this, the goal is to have this money in 6 months. The plan is 6 million. So just take 6 million and divide it by 6. And then you know how much you need to have each month. So in this case, you need to be saving about 1 million every month to make 6 million in 6 months. That's not possible, not at these rates. And within your budget, it is not possible also to save 1 million per month because your income is not even up to 1 million to start with. So the option you have here is you need to make a decision. One is to delay the purchase of the car. So rather than having it in the 6-month time frame you have, extend it for another 1 to 2 years and then gradually save for that. But realistically, with what I'm seeing here, unless there's information not provided here, you cannot do this at the savings rate. For your emergency fund goal, if you continue to put aside 50,000 per month for the next, to have 5 months of emergency savings, I think you realistically meet this goal within 9 months rather than 12 months. So that is possible. And then once you have that money within the next 9 months, you can take the 50K and channel it into Goal One's fund. And that will reduce the time it will take to make the 6 million from 15 months down to maybe 1 year itself. Well, not 1 year, but less than 15 months. So yeah, that's the reality check bit. So something I wanted to pay attention to is you've mentioned you want a side business. So you need to first estimate what it will cost you to start a side business. I don't know what kind of business you want to do, but I know that the ones that have the lowest cost to start is being a personal brand and selling your knowledge. Because the platforms for doing this are already available online. You can basically start posting content on anything on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. Build awareness of what you can offer and make an offer. It's effectively what I do. And the startup cost is almost zero. You're already using the tools you have to do that. And then just package something and sell to the public. So that's an option that you have. But if what you're going into is a product-based business, you need to get clear on what it will cost you to start. And once you have that number, then you can start a savings pot or a savings fund that will cover it. Within your current budget, you don't really have much room to optimize anything because a huge chunk of your money is going to the car. But if you decide that, I don't know, how important is this car to you? Is it an absolute must that this car must happen? If it's not, then you can actually let this particular goal sit for a while and focus on increasing your income. The quickest way to increase your income is genuinely through your job. So if you can upskill and get a job that will pay you more, you will make more money that you can channel to other stuff. And you can do that while also planning a service-based side hustle. It's possible to have both. Something else that I think you should pay attention to is honestly investing. I don't see personal investment, and you're such an age where you can start putting, even if it's a little amount of money, even if it's 50K every month aside into an investment pot. You need to start putting aside money in a currency that is not the Naira because Naira is so volatile. So start an investment in stocks, in foreign stocks, and it will serve you two purposes. One is that you have the currency hedge. And two, that you're going to be investing in companies that are more global and with higher possibility of return for you. So explore stock market investing in the US, for example, or find an ETF that is global and that will cover a bunch of countries together. Okay. What else for you? So yeah, I think that's all for this particular budget. A car is honestly a depreciating asset. So if it is possible for you to put your money instead in things that will yield better return for you, and is not just going to be losing value the moment you drive it out of the dealership, that would be good at this age. So get clear on what purpose this car is going to serve. So much of your money is tied to it. And the truth is that unless you're going to get that extra money to buy the car from somewhere else that is not your income, you are tying down money on something that you can be putting into your other goals to accomplish them faster. So you have some decisions to make. Young lady, think about it. But all in all, I think this is great. The only challenge this particular budget has is prioritizing. You're doing a great job of your budget, but you need to set your priorities straight and move your money to the things that actually count at this point. Right, hope that was helpful. We're going to go to budget 3. This one is a dummy budget I've created particularly, and for good reason. One, it's more international, and two, I have introduced a lot of complexities to it, just as a teaching moment for us, all right? So budget number 3, we are going to call this 28-year-old male Alex. Alex lives in the UK in Manchester. He works a full-time job. He wants to save more money, but his money keeps disappearing every month. Alex has debts of £4,200 in credit card and has a student loan. He's not clear on the amount of the loan or how much has been paid off in the loan because there's automatic deduction. In other words, Alex is not tracking his debt. On his income side, Alex earns £2,800 per month. His essential costs are rent, $850, that's a 1-bedroom flat. Everything about his utilities and all is embedded into his rent. So that's about 30% of his income, which is not bad. He spends £200 on groceries, insurance 15, taxes 100, transportation 280 on a car payment. So Alex is leasing a car. That's 220 and spends £60 on petrol. He pays £150 as minimum payment on his credit card every month. So that brings total essential cost down to 57.9%. It's still within our 60% mark, so not bad. Alex has savings of £200 as general savings. So Alex's entire savings is just 7% of his income. His lifestyle cost, 15% on self-care, that's £420. £159 on subscriptions alone, and £120 on takeaway. Now, there's some notes for Alex. Alex has £280 left, but he doesn't know where to put this money because he doesn't know what he spent £280 on. Now, if you look at the notes for subscriptions, there's Netflix, Spotify, Gym, Amazon Prime, Disney, YouTube, gaming, Audible, and Milkit. That is a lot of subscriptions for one person. In fact, as a rule, I don't think you need more than one streaming service. You can share other streaming service with other people, but there's no reason why you need to have Netflix, Disney Plus, and Amazon Prime at the same time. What are you watching? On self-care, Alex spends £100 on clothing, £150 on drinks, UK people, £40 on grooming, £80 on hobby, and £50 on gifts. This is an interesting budget. And again, it is a dummy budget, okay? But I'm sure there are a lot of people, and I have seen a lot of budgets that look like this. So this is just a teaching moment for all of us. Now, there are a number of issues with the way Alex's budget is. presented. One is that his car insurance is paid annually. And I do not think that Alex actually makes room for that car insurance. That is paid is a lump sum per year, but there is no plan for it, which means at the end of the year when it's due, Alex is going to scramble for the money. I talked earlier during the class about having an annual expense fund. Alex does not have that. So it's going to be a problem for him, okay? There is no fund for annual expenses. Alex has so many subscriptions, and this is a problem too. So there's going to be, this is about around £85 a month is £2,200 a year, just on subscriptions alone, 9 subscriptions for one person with overlapping services. Alex does not need all of this. So he needs to make a very huge cut and decide between what he actually uses and what he thinks he might use. You know, when you go buy a dress because you think, oh, one day I might wear this, but that day never really comes. Yes, I'm guilty of it too. The third issue here is that Alex has some very high interest debts, but his savings rate is very low. 7% savings is just a no-no. And you are paying over 23% on interest on debt. That is a huge red flag. So Alex needs to step into deciding how to pay off his debt. He can use the avalanche method or the snowball method to pay off his debt. The other part is that, let's look at Alex's car. He spends about 8% of his take-home money on leasing a car. But when you add the insurance costs, the cost for petrol, the cost for maintaining that car, that quickly climbs to about 12 to 14% of his income. So the question here is, for somebody who lives in Manchester in the UK, is having this car a necessity really? Because the UK is actually known for like really good transport systems. Okay, Europe is known for that. So does Alex really need a car in Manchester? For a lot of people, and a lot of you on this school, your highest expense will likely be what you spend on a car and what you spend on rent. These are the two places many people spend so much money. So you need to pay attention to these two costs. And then there is a £280 that has disappeared into a black hole that Alex cannot account for. Now, what does Alex need to do with a budget this sad and with a goal to save more money rather than having it disappear every month? So a few things. For example, in week 1, I would suggest to do a subscription audit. In fact, everybody needs a subscription audit. When I wanted to move into a new apartment and I was trying to figure out where the money was going to, I needed an extra £400 to figure out how to afford the rent of the new place. The first place I went to was my subscription. And I began to ask so many things like, why am I paying for this? I don't need it. You're gone. So you need to do a subscription audit for a start. If Alex is able to cancel Disney Plus, YouTube Premium, Audible, and the meal kit, he will save about £73 a month. That's over £800 in a single year already saved. These £280 that nobody knows where it went to needs to be tracked. So if you have a budget or you're spending and you're not sure, you have this black hole number, you're not sure where that money went to, tracking your spending is what you need to do. Because the moment you pick up your bank statement and look at it, you can immediately see where the money went to. So track for at least 2 weeks to a month. And then if you are in debt, Alex needs to freeze his credit card and you need to freeze your credit card. Stop spending on it. Stop adding more balances to it. What you need to do is to actually figure out how to pay off what is already there rather than incurring more debts. So that's the first thing Alex needs to do in the first week. All right. Subsequently, within the next month, we need to plan how to pay these debts off. A debt of $4,200 on credit card and a student loan that he doesn't know what it is. So for a start, get in contact with whoever is handling the payment for student loan and get your statement. You'll be surprised at how many people have no idea how much they have in debt. So do that and get a full picture of what your actual debt is. And that's what Alex needs to do here too. And then set up a payment plan when it comes to this credit card. Once you have a payment plan, and not just minimum payments, because if you're in high interest debt, you need to get rid of it as quickly as possible. So Alex needs to deal with that bit. Once he sorts out his credit card and the student loan, there'll be some savings in interest. Interest savings will hit about £3,000 already for a single year. So Alex needs to sort that out. Then go into the annual expense funds for things that you're going to build up, you're going to pay for every year. You need to make room for that in your budget on a monthly basis and start saving gradually for that amount. So for Alex's case, he needs to figure out one for his gifting, one for his car, one for the MOT and the services that he's paying for randomly at the end of the year. And then after that, Alex needs to then revise his budget. So once you've made all these adjustments, Alex's budget will change from this to something more meaningful because one, he's able to track better. Two, he's able to plan better. And just the mere fact that he's planning better, he's able to save more money and put that into a savings fund. So this 7% savings rate will increase. If Alex makes all these changes to his budget, he will have a better savings rate. His housing costs will be 34% still. His transport reduced by 15%. His food costs reduced by 9%. His debt payments would be better off. Everything would basically change. So the point is, I'm trying to make with this particular budget, and I think I can share this budget with you with the notes I have on it, just in case you're in this situation, is that number one, when you have an employer pension for countries where you have a match, in Nigeria, you have a match that's already automatic. But in countries like the UK and the US, you need to actually maximize your match. So check that you're using the full benefits of your employer's pension and you're getting the full match that they're offering you because it's just free money you're letting sit down and waste if you're not doing that, as long as your income can manage it. And then plan around the other stuff you have. Always ask yourself, this expense I'm incurring, is it really worth it? Is it really doing something for me or not? All right. Okay, so we're going to move on from this because we are pressed for time. But hopefully this was useful to you. The next part of this class that we're going to look at is quick wins and tools that you can use to practical steps you can take to achieve change and success when it comes to budgeting. So changes you can actually make today. First of all is you need automatic transfers. So set that up. Once your pay comes in, remove your savings from that pay and remove your investments and have an account where most of your spending funds need to go to. Set that up to be automatic for you within the first day of the new month. Second is to audit your subscriptions. The things you do not use weekly, remove it. There is no, I might use this. If you're not currently using it and you've not used it in the past week or the past month, get rid of it because it's just money you're tying up for other things. Create expense categories within your app and your spreadsheets. I would show you my Monzo app if that was possible, but there are multiple expense categories for different things. So put money into those different categories and spend from there. It's like a digital envelope system when it comes to budgeting. The next thing you can do is to schedule a money date for yourself. And I think of it as your weekly money hour. 15 minutes is all you need. Sit down every Sunday and at the end of every month and review what you spent money on. Are you in alignment? Is your spending looking like the goals you have for yourself or not? And if it's not, where can you make a change? Don't make big changes. Think about making small changes first. So rather than saying, I'll cut off 100%, plan, I'll change 5% this month. And then the next month, another 5%, etc. And then when it comes to non-essential purchases, have a wait list. Don't be so quick to go buy everything. Social media is such a crazy place right now that everything you see, like, damn, I want that. Wait 48 hours as a rule for any purchase that is not an essential purchase. If you can survive without it, wait. After 48 hours, if you still feel like, yeah, I still want this stuff, then yeah, sure, go buy it. But otherwise, don't do that. So there's a few tools you can use. You can use a spreadsheet when it comes to budgeting. You have full control and full customization. And you can use Google Sheets or Excel for this. The Smart Money Kit, you will see the link on the description of this video. The Smart Money Kit is built on Google Sheets. So that's an option, or you can go download. Another option is also apps. It's convenient and you can track in real time. So there are multiple apps depending on your location. So you can just go into your mobile store and search for expense tracking. You will see a bunch of apps pop up. Pick one that suits you. Be careful of your data though. Your banking tools can be integrated. So some bank apps actually track your expenses. In the UK, there's Revolut and Monzo. I think some regular big banks also do that now, I'm not sure. In Nigeria, sure, look at VFD, and I think Kuda does that too. So those are two options. And you can just put your actual expenses to go through those apps rather than your regular income app. You can use the envelope method when it comes to budgeting, and this is having physical cash. So you have actual envelopes and you put the money for different categories of your spending into that envelope. And as you spend, you just take money from that. So whenever that envelope is empty, you're done with that spending category for the month until the new month comes. And then there is a zero-based budgeting. So this is where you budget every money you have down to the last penny. There is nothing that does not have something it's doing. So there are different tools and different customization options. It's a matter of picking what works for you. So for the next 3 months from today, these are some things you can do when it comes to budgeting. In month 1, I want you to track everything. There's no judgment. You're not doing anything bad. Nobody's going to flog you if you're getting it wrong. Just track it. Get an app and track. For month 2, set realistic targets and then adjust your categories. So what are your plans? For example, in the next month, a realistic target for me is that I want to, let's say, keep my rent under 30%. This means I'll be negotiating my rent like a man, whatever. So keep it on that particular level. It might be that you want your feeding cost to stay under 20%. So pick one goal that is realistic and then adjust other categories to fit around it. And then for month 3, fine tune. Find out what works, because as you experiment, you will find what works for you. So when you find something that works that you can stick to, I want you to automate that so it sticks and it becomes a thing that you continue to do month on month. All right. So if you make this commitment to yourself to track, set something and fine tune it, you find that you're just better off when it comes to budgeting than otherwise. And so these are a few pitfalls I think you should avoid when it comes to budgeting. Don't be too aggressive with your costs. I've already mentioned this before. I know you want to get better and maybe save more, reduce your spending, but if you're aggressive, you will not stick to it and you will just end up falling off the bandwagon, okay? So small cuts, 2%, 5% cuts, 10% cuts, nothing too drastic, and then gradually adjust. It's a habit you're trying to build and it takes time. Don't forget your annual expenses or seasonal expenses. If you're in colder climes, you know that around this time of the year during winter, your wardrobe will change. So have you made plans for that wardrobe change or not before? The month of the change is not when to make plans. If you pay rent annually, the month of payment is not when you make plans for the payment. You make the plans for payment at the beginning of the period before the actual payment comes. So make plans for annual and seasonal costs. Even school fees is a seasonal cost. Account for inflation if you're international, very important. Stop comparing yourself to other people who are in different situations. The truth is that you will anchor your financial habits to the people who are closest to you, who are around you. So if you have very expensive friends, you want to look like them and be like them. So pay attention basically to who you spend time with, even to where you live. And then remember that we are not trying to be perfect. We are trying to make progress. So don't plan to be perfect all at once. Always plan for getting better every day. So each month, you know that you've made significant progress from where you were before. All right, so currently that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, please use the chat to put your questions in there. But there are a few frequently asked questions that I get all the time when it comes to budgeting, and I'm going to run through some of these. But if you do have questions for me, please put your questions within the chat box and I'll pick them up from there. Anyway, one of the questions that tends to come up is, I can't go through all of this, so I'll just pick a few so that we can close out quickly. Should I invest or should I pay off my debt first? It depends. If you have high interest debts, please pay them off quickly. Otherwise, if your debts are low interest, then you can do both. You can actually be paying off your debts gradually, always pay at least the minimum balance or slightly above it, and then you can invest what's left. But let's not discount the psychological factor there, the fact that there is just this peace of mind that you have when you're not owing anybody anything. And you cannot track this in a spreadsheet. So if you can, and the debt is not so overwhelming, try to work out just getting it out of the way so you can focus your life on actually building wealth through investing. How much emergency fund is enough? The typical rule is to plan for 3 to 6 months of your expenses. So start with 1 month and then build 1 month fast and then gradually put aside money to build up to 3 months and to 6 months. If you go watch the Design Your Financial Life workshop that happened earlier in February, I think this year, you will see a guide on building emergency funds. So see that video. How do I handle budgeting with a partner? I love this question because I love this. Okay, how can I get the copy of the template? The template is in the description of this video where I said, submit your budget for review. If you click the link, you will see a link to the template, so you can just make a copy of it and get one for yourself. All right. So, yeah, how do I handle budgeting with a partner? This is a very tricky one for a lot of people because marriage and money is such a sticky subject for so many. And honestly, this is not even, it's not new. Many marriages have broken up because of money issues. So what should you do? There are a few options you can explore here. And I'll give you 3 options, but pick what works best for your family. But the most important thing is to even discover your alignment when it comes to your values and your goals. You might find that you're already aligned, so have that conversation. And if you find you're not aligned, then think about areas where you can make some compromise when it comes to finances. So option 1 here is fully combine your income. So the money comes in, you have a joint account, you throw everything into the joint account, and then you gradually start to make plans, budget for the entire sum. It works well if you have alignment in values, there's high trust in this marriage, and you have similar income. The risk there is that you lose your autonomy because there is no my money, it's always going to be our money. Option 2 is to create a proportional split. And I think a number of families do this option. So everybody will contribute a proportion to shared expenses. So if somebody earns, for example, 60% of the total household income, that person might pay 60% of the rent, and the other person will handle 40%. And then both of you will have separate accounts for personal spending. It works well if you have different income levels and you don't want anybody feeling disgruntled about this or that. So that's option 2. Option 3 is, I think, the most common, and I think this might be what might work for a lot of people better, is that there will be a joint account for expenses that are shared. So your rental costs, your utilities, your groceries, your taxes, council tax, these are shared costs. So you have a joint account for that cost. Both of you just fund it from your income. You might pick a proportional split for funding, all right? Depending on who earns more and who earns what. Then you have separate individual accounts for your personal spendings. It will work well for most couples, and you have some level of independence when it comes to your income and some autonomy. So how to make this work though is that regardless of what option you pick, you want to set certain rules in place, because without rules, the system will fall apart. So your grand rules might be that when it comes to a large purchase, you need to set a threshold for what the large purchase is and decide for any purchase that is up to or exceeds X amount, we need to discuss it first before you spend it. So if somebody says, if your threshold is, for example, £500, it needs to be discussed. So somebody cannot just wake up and go buy something and come and be like, oh, I bought this, and then it goes, oh, but it's my money. No, trust. So discussion, set threshold limits. To have monthly money meetings. So you need to have conversations when it comes to your money, okay? It can be 15 to 30 minutes, nothing too long. Just review what you've bought, your budget, review your expenses, and have a conversation about it. Marriages will thrive on communication. There will be no financial surprises when you do this. So everything is just always out there in the open. And regardless of what any partner earns, you have an equal say. Nobody gets to say, because I make more money, therefore I have my opinion has a greater weight. You don't get to do that. It's an equal stake in this because it's a marriage. All right. The question about high cost area, I already talked about that. So adjust your budget to meet the area you live in, but definitely ask yourself, if you can live in a lower cost area, can you make the switch? You can live in an expensive city, but live in an area of the city that is cheaper. You can live in Lagos, but live on the mainland, not the island. You can live in London, but rather live in central London or the West End. You can move further away from there. Houses are cheaper the farther away you are from the center of economic activity. So consider that. And consider if it's a long-term thing or short-term thing for you. For some people, it might make sense for you to live closer to work, for example. But ask yourself, am I doing this? Will this situation change in the next 2 to 5 years? And if it's not going to, then do you absolutely need to be in that space? Or how can you make more money to cover for that cost? So lots of conversations to have. I do not see any other questions in the comments, so I am going to leave this up here. But if you do have questions you want me to address, do feel free to send me an email or reach out to me on any of my social channels and we can have a conversation there. So as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to budgeting, so much of this is quite intuitive. There are foundational principles and guidance you can follow. But always make sure you're making adjustments depending on your goals, your values, your life stage at all times. It will change per time for you. So nothing is a hard and fast rule that you absolutely must stick to. But you need to stay mindful of the decisions you're making and how it's affecting your life and those who are dependent on you. And finally, it is all about progress, not perfection. Things will change, new systems will come out, but always be open to embracing that change and optimizing at every point of time in your life. So you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Onyeka on LinkedIn. Just send me a connection request. Let's have a chat. You can look at my website for other resources to support you in your finances at onyekahub.com, or you're already on my YouTube channel, so do feel free to explore the playlist on my YouTube channel for more videos on managing your money and growing wealth. Our next class will be holding at the end of this month. So if you are not signed up and you just stumbled on this video, there will be a link in the description for you to sign up. You also find there a link to download the budget template that I've used in this class. And if you want me to review your budget too, do fill out the form and send your budget to me, and I'll give you a quick review and let you know what thoughts I have on it. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this session today. I appreciate your joining me here this evening, taking our time this weekend to be in this class, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.